Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So we're going to take a look at the market and go through those market conditions, see what kind of shifts we've seen in there. And since I didn't do a show last week, we have a lot of stock requests that came through, and then I'm going to finish it with a couple of ideas. Now, what I want to do to start is I've got 5 stocks that I think look real attractive. They're AI stocks, but they haven't been exploited. And the way that I do work for my institutional clients, really not looking for short-term trades. I'm looking for something that has some length to it, maybe a bigger base, looking for something that actually has some potential to go up, say, over the next 3 to 6 months, that type of thing. So we're going to lean on the weekly chart and look at some other things. I'll talk about what I'm looking at. But I think these stocks have some real potential over the coming months if they continue to play AI. Now, the good news is if they get away from AI, then there's a lot of these stocks have a significant amount of support. So I like that type of environment where we've got both that two-prong approach, lots of support and lots of potential if they really get going. Let's go ahead and get started there. Okay, so I've got my 4 charts up. I think this is important to explain real quick. So I've got a monthly in the bottom left, weekly bottom right, daily in the upper right, and then another weekly in the upper left. Now, here's the relative strength. Okay, we do have RSI here. I've got it in 2 forms, both 20 RSI and 5 RSI. But I've got the monthly chart with the momentum conditions, ADX and MACD. Same thing for the weekly here, and then same thing for the daily here. So what I do is that I lean on the weekly chart for entries, looking for patterns, especially if I'm looking for something that can move over the next 3 to 6 months. But I'm trying to use the monthly trend to see which ones have the real potential. If the monthly chart doesn't show that it has any real potential, then I know I'm dealing with more of a trading play, and I'm really going to time it off the daily at that point. And I'm not really necessarily focusing on something that I would recommend to my institutional clients at that point. It would just be a short-term trade. So we'll get this a little bit more clear as we go through. But look at this big green bar to get things going. Monster buying. When we see a big green bar like that, that's essentially us seeing everybody in agreement with that. A lot of volume here. Right, and when that happens, that it's just like everybody's in agreement that this is a stock as a buy, and now we're sort of seeing another little mini version of that potentially breaking out. But what I like is you can see what's taking place. We were following a lower lows and lower highs. Now all of a sudden we're starting to see a shift, and we're starting to see a shift in the 18-month line. It's still a little on the early side, but I think there is some potential for a pretty decent move here. The next stock is Datadog. All right, you can see what's forming on the monthly chart. I think it's important to just take a quick peek at this and see what's taking place. So we're still relatively close to that 18-month. You can see green DI, which is the strength of the buyers, starting to break out and get going for the first time in this move in a way that looks like it has real potential to break out and keep going. And it's a low ADX pattern, all right? And then if you go and look here, we had a situation where it was really oscillating between green and red, but now all of a sudden it looks like the buyers are truly stepping in here, this looks pretty attractive to me. It's also making a higher low and a higher high, respecting the moving average. So I'm kind of thinking that this is starting to emerge out of here. So the 3 things we're looking for is momentum. We've got that taking place on the weekly chart. We've got pretty good trend structure. Because what's happened here is we've flipped this down. It looked like it was going to the downside, and we flipped down and made a higher low and then a higher high. So that's improving trend structure. And then the relative strength is starting to show signs of improvement as well. Look at something like Dell. This is one of the better looking stocks of this group. We had a pretty long correction phase on the monthly chart. Now it's starting to emerge out of here with a rising 18-month and a rising 40. I go into a lot of detail on this in my book as well as my courses in terms of why I use the 18 and the 40 and why the MACD and ADX are great complementary tools, supplemental tools to price. They don't overtake price. We're confirming what we're seeing in the price action. All right, and then you can see what's happened here. We had a break of a downtrend line, right? And then we tested by testing the moving averages, and now we've turned back to the upside here. We've completed a 1, 2, 3 to the upside. Pretty bullish situation as this is starting to emerge here. And the ADX is actually in a very strong position. I call this a power trend, where the upside move gets to 50 or so, and the decline, the bottom, the trough only gets to 25. Very, very big sign of strength there. So I like to see that. Now the same thing is going on Rambus. Now, I recognize that this has been exploited somewhat, all right? But we've had this one breakout here. I think if we can get an opposing trend pattern where this 18 crosses down below the 40 on the daily chart, go through a little bit of a correction, come a little bit closer to the 18-week, I still think this could be something that's playable, especially because the ADX is in such a strong position right now. So definitely a name to keep an eye on. And the last one is this snow. Now, it's a little bit awkward in terms of the price structure, the way it's set up. But what I love is I love to see this low ADX pattern on the monthly chart, right? And then we've got the green DI starting to show signs of life. And you can see ADX on the weekly chart really starting to break out here. So don't get me wrong, all of these stocks are pretty volatile. You got to be prepared for a lot of movement. Snow is definitely a very volatile stock. But I think if this can hold any kind of a pullback here and turn back up through 250, it's definitely one I would be very interested in watching, taking a hard look at, because we've got some room for this to roam. You can see the base that's formed on the monthly chart, leaving it some pretty good potential here over the course of the next few months. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. Now, I'm on the services page of Rabil Stock Research. I would suggest going to the book tab and getting started with the book if you have an interest in and you're new to what I'm trying to do, my approach. But you can learn more in-depth information by going through the courses. There's 3 different courses. They're all lifetime access now, and you can buy all 3 as a bundle and save a little bit of money that way. Also, the individual package has 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video for that package, and we do a webinar once a month as well that has been very popular with the subscribers. So take a look at that. Okay, so we're going to run through the market conditions for the S&P, and then I'm going to go through all the different chart aspects as well. But let's take a look at this real quick. The sentiment has been oscillating. Now it's back to 38%. It was 42%, and the week before that it was 38%, and the week before that it was 42%. So it's really just hanging around this area, but it's in a danger zone, or what I'd call cautious here. So just recognize that there's a little bit more bullishness out there, maybe a little bit too much bullishness. And then the overbought oversold has dropped down to 66. Now I left it in the negative camp because it was overbought for so long. I really want to see this work its way back to neutral, and then we can start moving this number back. So anyway, I would just say right now we're still in what I would consider to be somewhat overbought territory, and the sentiment is still a little too bullish. Now, one of the things that added this week is the volatility on the daily jumped up on that big day on Friday. We got a huge move that caused the volatility. The average true range popped up all in just in one day's action. So we'll have to watch that. It could be a short-lived thing. If we go right back up and break the 18-day and start trending again to the upside, then this very well could come right back. But it's something we definitely need to watch. Right now it's negative. I'll show you why the moving average is rising underneath the average true range. Didn't affect the weekly volatility at all. In terms of the trend and momentum, we did flip the trend for the daily to neutral. We're flattening that moving average, so I'm putting that at the neutral right now. Again, I'll show you that in a sec. And then the momentum is only one. Monthly is still positive. We're neutral for both the weekly and the daily. Let's go ahead and flip over to the charts now. Okay, so let's start with the volatility here. We can see that on the weekly chart, this is the average true range. Really just had a tiny little bump, no real change in that, and certainly no change in the moving average. So both of those are still considered to be positive because they're declining. It doesn't really matter the level. I know this is one of the higher levels we've seen in terms of average true range in a few years, but it's the direction that it goes that's important. Okay, so that is declining, and I would say that's lowering the risk. Now you can see what's happened here for the first time since basically May. We've been declining on a daily basis, and now all of a sudden it's starting to pop. So this means to me that you got to be a little bit more careful with your trading plays. Okay, we've had great trading opportunities on these pullbacks where the RSI was dipping down under the 50 mark. RSI 5 just kept on dipping here, right? But now we've got an increase in volatility. So you got to be a little bit more careful now. That increases the likelihood that you get stopped out. That the increase in volatility just causes a little bit more of a different difficult trading environment. All right. Now, you can still play if you can find stocks emerging. And what I look for from a bigger picture standpoint, if I'm looking to play bigger plays, as I've mentioned, I'm looking for, solid trend and structure. I'm looking for solid momentum, and I'm looking for relative strength. All right. Let's go ahead and flip over and look at the different time frames. So we can see that the monthly is still working strong. The 18 is above the 40. Both lines are rising. We've got a pretty good momentum environment overall in terms of confirmation. On the weekly chart, what's missing here is we just don't have that great a momentum. The MACD did confirm on the way up and has throughout. You can see it is dying out a little bit based on that histogram just kind of petering out there. Now, the reason why I've got this at neutral is that the average ADX's DI line was not been able to cross above 25. All right, even though we've continued to move higher and higher and higher, all the way from the low, pretty much straight to the upside. Green DI showing the strength of the buyers is just not all that great. So what we're looking for is actually let me blow this up real quick. We're looking for this red DI, the sellers, to come and take out a prior high here. We want this to pop up to the upside and get things going, at least show that there's some sign of real selling taking place. Once that happens, then I think we've got to be, a little bit more cautious, because I think we're going to end up going down and testing the 18-week or possibly the 18-month if that were to happen. Now, the daily chart showing this big red bar here, trying to slice through the 18-day. Now, I've mentioned this over and over again for my subscribers. We really need to take out the low of that bar. There's a close below, all right, but we need to take out the low of the bar that closes below. This has happened over and over again. We haven't really had that happen yet in this move since May, really. So we're going to need to see this drop back down. Now, if we go to a new high, then you start all over again. This red bar doesn't really matter. You got to break, close below the 18 again, and start the process again. But if we were to fail sometime over the next couple of days and come back down through here, we'd have a legitimate break of the 18-day for the first time in the move to the upside, and I think that would be incredibly important. I think it would put a lot of pressure on the 18-week and potentially the 18-month if that were to happen. Now, if we look at this on an hourly basis, you can see that big red bar is this big drop. Confirmation would be taking out this low, and we came down and tested it, but we were unable to follow through and get through that low. That would be a on this time frame. It would have been a confirmation of a shift in trend. We had the 1, 2, 3, which is sort of some evidence that we've switched the trend, but not a complete and confirming way of looking at it. You have to take out this prior low here. If we do that, then we'd have another lower high and another lower low, and that would be a confirmation of a trend shift. So that's really what we're looking for, and that would be confirming taking out the low of this bar. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's take a quick look at the IWM, because we do have some pretty good action taking place here. We are breaking out on this index in a little bit more of a definitive manner than we did before. It was kind of just jumping through. Now we had what looked like was going to be failure at this prior peak with this big red bar. Now we're overtaking that in the same breath, but also notice what's taking place here. We're getting a little jump in this relative strength line. Really good sign. I want to see some separation between that and the moving average, and that's what's going to get this thing starting to turn to the upside. So we need a little bit more daylight here. If this can push higher over this next week or two, I think we'll get a shift in this relative strength. That could really be a good sign for this market and a potential breakout taking place. All right, let's start going through some of these requests that came through. So we look at Apple. Again, when I break it down, I'm looking at three different things. I'm looking at the price structure and the price action. I'm looking at the overall momentum conditions, and then I'm looking at relative strength. Okay, and if I look at this, I just don't think this has any momentum really to speak of, at least not on the monthly or the weekly. We're starting to show a little bit of a sign of some momentum on the daily chart, so it could be a potential trading play or something like that, but I'd like to see this consolidate a little bit more. There's a little bit of sign of improvement on a relative basis. But if you look at the way this is played out, I'd like to see if the price structure is really going to improve. We took out this prior high, so we took out a low, and now we've immediately taken out a prior high. If this is going to really turn bullish on the structure, we're going to need to see this make a higher low and then a higher high. And then we've turned things around. And if the relative strength keeps doing what it's doing, we'd have two of the three. Now, it's very possible that the ADX is getting going on this time frame and it'll spill over into the next time frame. So I think the most important thing is to see this price action shift with a higher low and a higher high. I think that would be a real good sign there if we can see that. All right, let's look at AVGO. So this has had all three of what we're looking for. The problem is that it's been exploited, is what I was talking about at the beginning here. To me, this is not early. I mean, I want to find something that's like this is the emerging basing pattern kind of breaking out, and even then, I wouldn't consider that early. But at least it had some width to the base in the formation. Now we had like a little mini base here, another one here, and we don't have one right now. We don't even have a mini one right here. All right, so I think we need to see this consolidate a little bit or pull back a little bit closer to the 18-month. That's the guideline for me. When we get too far away from this line, we need to see there is sideways consolidation or a pullback all the way to that line. And we've had that happen. We just haven't had it happen recently. So I think that's what we're looking for. Now, if you want to trade it, we've got a little pullback to the weekly chart with good momentum conditions in place. And we're trying to turn the corner here on a daily basis. I'd like to see this test maybe go sideways a few more days, and then this could be in a pretty good position for a short-term trade. Okay, MP, sort of the same thing. A lot of power in the move, but we've got a lot of separation between price and the 18-month line. So it's not something I would consider from a long-term standpoint at this point, but we did get a little breakout from this sideways consolidation pattern after the initial thrust, right? Big thrust, a lot of momentum, great volume pattern, and now we're trying to break out of here. What I like about this is that the breakout is now coming back down and maybe potentially testing this area. And I think if we can make a little higher pivot low right there, that might be a pretty nice entry pattern for this to play as a trade. Definitely worth looking at from that standpoint. Now, the Nvidia is interesting because this has formed this little sideways consolidation pattern, but it's not done it in a way where it looks all that powerful. And then if you notice, it tried to break out from that, but then immediately got rejected, and it's right back down below the breakout area. Let me see if I can draw that in and see if it really did break below. Yeah, it failed at that breakout level, and now we're below. So it's possible you're looking for a second entry, what I call a second mouse. The first mouse gets caught in the trap, and then we look for that next entry coming back up. So certainly something to keep an eye on, but we're going to need a big green bar to overcome this big red bar there. I don't like the volume on those as well, a couple distribution days. So just be aware of that. I think we're going to need some strength coming out of this if it's going to really get going again. Oracle, again, exploited is the word that I use. Now, I want to play them a little, like these are the areas where I'm a lot more interested in these. Then we get an exploited move, right? A move to the upside and we get stretched away and then it pulls back. So I think this is going to take some time. Now, again, if you're looking at it from a short-term trading standpoint, we've got all the conditions in place for a short-term trade, but this is not set up yet. We're going to need these moving averages, I think, to come together a little bit more. So I'm going to be looking for time. I think this needs more time in this consolidation pattern. Give it another couple weeks, and this might actually set up on the daily chart. SC is now pulling back on the weekly, all right? Not really a long-term play. It's more of an intermediate to short-term. We're getting a pullback, though, with good momentum conditions on the ADX. The MACD is crossing the signal line. However, because the ADX is so strong, I'm willing to keep watching this. What we're going to need is to see this. It's making lower highs here. We're going to need this to turn that pattern and make a higher high, especially with if the MACD can hold the zero line here. All right, if we can do that with the low ADX condition, then I'd be looking to get in as this comes back above this prior pivot area, this little resistance zone that was created on the last pullback. All right, TTWO. Again, this has just moved too much. I think we can see we've been making higher highs and higher lows. We need a pullback on the weekly chart, and that's going to take a little bit of time. I would say over the next month, maybe 6 weeks, a consolidation or pullback to get it a little bit closer, and I think that would be a lot more interesting. Now let's look at this TEVA. This has been a great stock since it's emerged out of the base. Now this is where I was recommending it. It was showing up on my reports back in here coming out of this big base. Now, I might start to consider it again, but we've got this little resistance here. You notice how we had the big green bar and then the big red bar. Not really, it's the type of thing now I think it's going to need a little bit more time working that off before it'll be ready to break through there. But definitely a name to keep on your watch list. Okay, I've got 3 quick names that I want to bring up that I think look real interesting. Look at what's setting up now. Again, I like the combination of the bigger time frames, but sometimes you only get the weekly. The monthly is not bad here, but I think it would need a little bit more time if it were going to be a bigger picture play. But from a weekly standpoint, we've pulled this back to support. We've got great momentum conditions in place. We've got this little ABC pattern that has worked sideways. We didn't take out the low even. And MACD is back down to the 0 line. So coming back up through 30, I think this would look pretty attractive from my vantage point. Another one here is this Manulife Financial. This looks like it's forming like a cup and handle pattern on the daily chart. It's been in a low ADX condition on the weekly, and you can see, look at what this did on the monthly. It made this big move, and now it's worked all the way back and finding support at the 18-month line, giving it plenty of time here to form a decent base. I think if this can break out from here, we get things going on that one. And then finally, this PCT, look at the big base that's formed on the monthly chart. And now we've consolidated sideways back to weekly. I think if we can clearly break through this 15 level, this is going to look real attractive. Thanks for watching. If you have any stock requests, you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com or just put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques with MACD and ADX, you can go to my YouTube channel. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.